Hi. We're learning about cell biology and life science in a nutshell. Um, we are currently learning about molecules and cell membranes called phospholipids. The first phospholipid was identified in 1847. Um, um, the first one was called lecithin that was found in tissues. Um, and phosphatidylcholine, which is, I guess, the same as lecithin, in the egg yolk of chickens. It was found by Theodore Nicolas Goblet, a French chemist. Biological membranes in eukaryotes also contain another class of lipid, or a sterol, interspersed among the phospholipids. Together, they provide membrane fluidity and mechanical strength. Purified phospholipids are produced commercially and have applications in nanotechnology and material science. And this diagram is showing what a phospholipid looks like. So they have a negatively polar charged phosphate group as a head group, and a long tail, fatty acid tail, with two chains of fatty acid tails. The right side shows the chemical makeup of the phospholipid. Phosphatidylcholine is the major component of lecithin. It is also a source for choline in the synthesis of acetylcholine in cholinergic neurons. So the structural formula of phosphatidylcholine, so the blue, it says fatty acid. So this is the glycerol backbone in black, which is a carbon, two CH2s coming off of it, and an oxygen and a hydrogen. So the phosphate group is right here, bound to the glycerol via an oxygen, and so choline is the alcohol head group in this particular phospholipid, which is phosphatidylcholine. So in the blue and green is the fatty acid. R stands for the fatty long hydrocarbon fatty acid tail. So the amphipathic character, from the Greek term amphis, which means both, and philia, which means love or friendship. It's a term describing the chemical compound possessing both a hydrophilic or water-loving or polar, and a lipophilic or fat-loving properties. So polar and nonpolar. Phospholipid head contains a negatively charged phosphate group and glycerol. It is hydrophilic. So it's attracted to water. The phospholipid tails usually consist of two long fatty acid chains. They are hydrophobic and avoid interactions with water. When placed in aqueous solutions, phospholipids are driven by hydrophobic interactions, resulting in the fatty acid tails aggregating to minimize interactions with water molecules. These specific properties allow phospholipids to play an important role in the phospholipid bilayer. In biological systems, phospholipids occur in molecules, also such as proteins, glycolipids, and sterols interact with phospholipids. So in the bilayer, such as in the cell membrane, lipid bilayers occur when hydrophobic tails line up against one another, forming a membrane of hydrophilic heads on both sides facing the water. Such movement can be described by the fluid mosaic model, describing the membrane as a mosaic of lipid molecules that act as a solvent for all the substances and proteins within it. Sterols contribute to membrane fluidity by hindering the packing together of phospholipids. So cholesterol is a kind of sterol. So the substances within the membrane, the bilayer, can be proteins, other lipid molecules, such as sterols. These molecules are free to diffuse laterally through the lipid matrix and migrate over through the membrane, horizontally or sideways. And lipid polymorphism is the behavior of lipids where it allows for a little more variation in the movement of molecules in the membrane. So here's a diagram of a cell, the extracellular fluid, the nucleus, and the cytoplasm. The cell membrane surrounding the cell. So the different parts of the cell membrane so in this diagram, you have the various molecules embedded in the bilayer of the membrane. Filaments are the cytoskeleton inside the cell for cell structure and integrity. So there's various proteins, surface protein, globular protein, or an integral protein through the bilayer, protein channels or transport proteins helping molecules move across the membrane. So large, bulky molecules or ions which have charge that cannot move across the membrane require channels. Also a helical protein, which is also an integral protein. Peripheral proteins on the edges of the membrane. Also carbohydrate tails, glycoproteins, proteins with carbohydrates attached, globular proteins. So again, the phospholipid molecule with its hydrophilic head and hydrophobic tail. Here is phosphatidylcholine shown, and the bilayer and how the phospholipids arrange themselves within the bilayer. The plasma membrane or plasma lemma is a semi-permeable lipid bilayer, which is in all living cells. It contains a variety of biological molecules, primarily proteins and lipids, which and carbohydrates also. These are all molecules which are involved in a vast array of cellular processes. The membrane serves as an attachment point for both the intracellular cytoskeleton inside the cell and, if present, the cell wall for plants and bacteria. We'll continue in the next part. Thank you.